The headline screams, Navy and FBI took down a $5 billion meth syndicate. You search for details, only to hit a blocked page and a dead end. No timeline, no names, no method, just a number designed to travel. This episode follows that breadcrumb trail. We'll map what a real multi-agency operation looks like, intel, interdiction, indictments, and then show where the $5 billion claim likely comes from. As the gaps widen, you'll see why seasoned analysts don't chase numbers, they chase sources. Stay with me and learn the checklist that separates fact from friction. A single number outruns everything around it, 5 billion. It sticks, even when the trail behind it is a blur of missing links and vanishing sources. The post that made it viral didn't even use normal spelling. US Navy and FBI just took down a $5 billion meth syndicate, a title written to dodge filters, not to inform. Click through and you hit a block notice about going too fast, but the content keeps circulating, detached from dates, case numbers, or named units. That's the core problem, a precision dollar figure with no verifiable spine. Watch how a $5 billion label can form out of thin assumptions. Take a big seizure claim, call it 1 metric ton at high purity. Use a high street price, say $50 per gram. Now assume it's cut into more product. Call it a 2 to 3 times expansion because of diluents, packaging, and dose math. Suddenly, 1 million grams at $50 becomes $50 million. And with purity, uplift, and dose multipliers layered in, you can push the spreadsheet into the hundreds of millions or more without changing the physical weight at all. Swap in higher retail prices from select cities, or assume multiple rounds of cutting, and billions appear on cue. That's not evidence, it's compounding assumptions. We've seen the pattern. Media copy the top-shelf street value, while the documents, when they exist, use lower wholesale ranges more aligned with bulk trafficking and purity tested at the lab. The gap is structural, not accidental, and it rewards the loudest number, not the most defensible one. When a video hides keywords in leet speak, it signals an intent to slip past moderation, not to provide a clean trail to agencies, timelines, or dockets. So here's the payoff. Big seizure numbers often come from the method you choose, not the drugs you seized. And there are 3 main methods that shape those totals. Next, we'll break them down and show how professionals sanity check each one before a figure ever makes it to a podium. 3 methods, 3 very different price tags, so which one tells the truth? The answer depends on what you're measuring, who's doing the measuring, and why the number needs to live outside a spreadsheet. Agencies, prosecutors, and reporters each reach for a different lens: wholesale for operational reality, street value for public impact, potential impact for a broader story about harm. Each is a tool, none is the whole picture. Start with wholesale. That's the price traffickers pay in bulk at the source or at the border, and it moves with purity and supply. Investigators prefer this frame for internal metrics because it reflects the market stage they actually disrupted. If a shipment never left a maritime corridor or a border stash site, valuing it at retail ignores the entire distribution chain that never happened. Lab-tested purity also matters here, since a 70% load isn't the same as a 90% load when you're scoring a trafficking cell's real loss. Shift to street value. Now the unit is grams, not kilos, and the math multiplies fast. Retail pricing per gram can swing wide by city and season, and dealers rarely sell the pure product. Cutting moves that 90% purity down and boosts volume, so doses expand the count. This is where totals balloon by 300 to 500%, not because more drugs exist, but because you've changed the unit, the purity, and the risk premium all at once. Then there's potential impact. This frame projects outcomes if the load reached consumers, claims about lives affected or harm averted. It's the least verifiable method because it relies on scenarios, not transactions or seized weight. It speaks to policy goals and community risk, but it does not tie to a ledger or a single price point. Let's run the same load through each lens. Take 1 metric ton of meth at 90% purity. At a conservative border wholesale rate of $5,000 per kilogram, the figure lands at $5 million. Move it to metro retail at $50 per gram, and you're at $50 million. Layer in dilution and dose math, and the model can push far higher without adding a single kilogram. Oversight bodies have flagged this spread for years, urging clear disclosure of which method is used and why, while UN-linked datasets show similar tiered jumps across markets. Here's the takeaway. Without the method, the dollar figure is noise. So what did the Navy and the FBI actually do in operations like this? The headline pairs the Navy with the FBI, but their jobs don't overlap the way the Post suggests. At sea, the Navy's role is maritime interdiction and patrol in international waters. They operate with combined task forces that track suspicious vessels, queue aircraft, and shadow targets across shipping lanes. They can hail, maneuver, and hold the perimeter on the high seas under international law. In task groups, they share radar tracks, signals, and flight hours to feed a common picture, then hand off when a boarding needs to happen. That handoff matters. The Coast Guard carries the legal authority to board, search, and seize under clear statutes. In many interdictions, a Navy ship provides the platform and security, while a Coast Guard detachment climbs the ladder, secures the crew, and conducts the search. Once contraband is found, logs start, samples get sealed, and chain of custody begins. Every gram, every container, every photo needs a signature and a timestamp that will hold up later in court. On shore, the FBI's lane is different. They build criminal cases, not board ships. They run conspiracy investigations, Title III wiretaps, and financial forensics to follow the profits. When maritime forces seize a load, the FBI or DEA takes the network apart: who funded the shipment, who arranged the brokers, who moved the money, and which shell companies handled the invoices. That work leads to indictments, arrests, and forfeiture, none of which lives in a viral caption. You can see the pattern in credible cases. Maritime forces intercept a freighter or a dhow carrying meth or precursors linked to a smuggling route. A Coast Guard-led boarding team seizes the cargo and detains the crew under the flag state or bilateral agreements. Samples go to a lab. The case package, reports, photos, GPS tracks, moves to investigators. The FBI and DEA map phones, bank wires, and chats. Then prosecutors file charges. That is the pipeline from sea to courtroom. There are firm boundaries. The Posse Comitatus framework limits the military from acting as domestic police. The Navy supports interagency operations but doesn't run arrests on U.S. streets. International partners like JIATF South and combined maritime groups stitch the picture together because billion-dollar claims would span regions, flags, and jurisdictions. Real operations leave paper trails: task force names, case numbers, indictments, and court filings. With the roles clear, let's move to the checklist that tests the next $5 billion bust. 10 minutes of checking beats 10,000 shares. Here's the fast way analysts verify a supposed record seizure without getting sucked into the hype. Start with the source. Find the original press release from an agency site, not a repost. Look for a case number or a docket link. If you hit a login wall or a broken page instead of a document, lower your confidence right away. Real operations leave public breadcrumbs. Viral uploads without them are signals to slow down, not speed up. Next, lock down the method. A number means nothing if you don't know how it was built. Scan for the words that tell you which lens is in play: street value, wholesale, or estimated impact. If the post doesn't say, treat the figure as a claim, not a fact, this is where credible outlets slip. They will repeat a number that sounds official without stating how it was calculated, and once that happens, the estimate spreads untethered from any underlying math. Now, run your own math, use conservative wholesale ranges, then adjust for purity if it's stated. If purity is missing, do not assume high-end numbers. Bracket it with reasonable lows. Build a second estimate from bulk pricing first, and keep it separate from any retail calculation. You're not trying to match the headline. You're testing whether the headline survives contact with basic arithmetic. Confirm who did what. Navy support at sea, Coast Guard for boarding and seizures, FBI or DEA for the network and indictments. Scan for joint task force names and which office led. A claim that mashes agencies together without roles is performing, not reporting. If there's no mention of labs, affidavits, or which U.S. Attorney's Office filed charges, that's another downgrade. Follow the paper. Indictments, affidavits, seizure photos, and lab confirmations are the backbone. If the documents don't exist or can't be found after reasonable searching, Assume the number is inflated or the event is misrepresented. When you apply this checklist, most sensational figures shrink by half or more, and sometimes they collapse entirely. Use it on the next big claim you see, post the method, and share the source you verified. When you do that, you stop being an amplifier and start being a verifier. Numbers without methods are marketing. Methods with documents are evidence. That's the line that matters when a headline shouts record and offers no math. Before you share the next claim, run the checklist, name the source, state the valuation method, post the link. If the method's missing, treat the number as a pitch, not proof. When you force clarity, wholesale, street, or impact, the story changes, and you can see what was seized versus what was implied. Next, we'll stress test a confirmed multi-agency bust using the checklist. We'll see if the dollar figure holds, shrinks under wholesale math, or collapses when documents do the talking. Every number tells a story. Most just don't survive the math, like comment and subscribe for the next deep dive into how truth gets built or inflated.